What's going on, everybody? Welcome to yet another episode of the AI Inside Podcast, the show where we take a look at the AI that is layered throughout so much of the world of technology. I am one of your hosts on the West Coast, Jason Howell. Over on the East Coast, we've got Jeff Jarvis covering the country here in the U.S.
Coast to coast AI.
Coast to coast. The host with the most about artificial intelligence is Jeff Jarvis. Good to see you, Jeff. Good to meet once again to talk about everything that's happening. I can't wait to talk about our top of the show story because I think this is just really unique and everything. But I thought before we get there, you know, like we talk about all the time, we're learning about AI as we go along, and I'm figuring out new ways to use it and everything. And I had a really interesting and unique, unique to me, maybe not unique to others, experience with ChatGPT on Friday. And I thought I'd just take like a couple of minutes to talk to you about it because like it was actually really cool. So if you'll humor me for a second, but I've been working with a business coach, right? Because a lot of all this stuff that I'm doing here with the content and AI Inside and everything else that I'm doing with the YouTube channel, like, yes, it's content and it's fun and everything, but I also have to like make a living out of it. And so I've been working with a business coach to try and understand better how I run a business because that's not my strong suit, let's say. And I had a really great kind of meeting with her on last Monday. So we're talking last week. And I had a really good vision of like what my work needed to be in order to kind of define certain things. And on Friday, I opened up ChatGPT and I took all the work from my coach that we had gotten to, and I fed that into ChatGPT. And I basically started what ended up being a 3-hour conversation with ChatGPT around like around structuring a bunch of stuff related to my business, because I noticed for myself that one thing that I get really overwhelmed with is like there's details going in a million different directions and I need to organize them some way so that they are useful to me and not just a bunch of information that's probably useful to somebody, but I don't know what to do with it because it's just I'm overwhelmed by it. And it occurred to me that afternoon that using something like ChatGPT would be a good way to work just with the data and information that I had, both in my brain and on paper and in my notes and everything, but help me organize this so that I can do something with it.
Yeah.
And it was just a really cool conversation. Like I say conversation because it was just with a chatbot, but by the end of it, I felt like, oh my goodness, if I had had this kind of development, because it wasn't solving my problems for me. It was just asking me the questions that I told it to ask me one by one so that I could insert my insight and information into it over time and then take all that information that I've given you and organize it. And if I had like paid someone like a business coach to do that with me, I would have been happy with the results. And it was just a really cool experience. I don't know
Jason,
if you've had that.
You didn't fall in love or propose or anything here.
No, but it did make me like, it did kind of make me think about that a little bit and like, okay, I can see
I'm getting along with this thing. Yeah,
totally. Because,
Kismet.
you know, like, yes, the entire time, it's not like,
me.
Yes, I know, right? Oh, wow, you said just the right things. Thank you. Of course, throughout the entire experience, I recognized and realized this is a chatbot, this is AI, and everything. But the process of it was, you know, very much in some ways mimicked kind of like a human back and forth. And I certainly at the end of it felt like I got exactly what I was hoping to get out of the experience. It was just it was a cool experience. And I want to explore that a little bit more.
So that's great. Question first.
Yeah.
Did it say anything in that whole 3 hours that you said, no, that's wrong? That's
well, there was one time where, you know, it's kind of going through one by one in the order that I specified, right? Like, this is what I want to do. I first want to take a look at this thing, and you're going to ask me one by one for each thing that's here, how I feel, you know, where it rates on a scale of 1 to 10, blah, blah, blah. And there was a time in the middle there where I realized I had skipped something and I wanted to go back to the previous thing and insert something in there. And it was like, and it was able to do that. But when it picked up on where it left off, it was a little sidetracked and it went into a different direction. And I had to kind of course correct it and remind it like, no, remember before this, we were doing this task and now you're going in this direction. And that's not where I want to go right now. Get back on track. We're back to this task. Here was my original instruction. Let's continue. And it was able to come back on. I mean, I don't know that I got much information out of it that really raised my, my kind of concern or anything like that, because mostly it wasn't giving me advice. It was just, it was kind of like, to a certain degree, it was kind of like a secretary that was in the room that was asking me the questions I wasn't asking myself. Because if I'm given this whole sheet with like 20 questions, like just answer all these, that's overwhelming for me. But if you start at the top and you say, okay, ask me the first one, and I'll give you my answer. Ask me the second one. And there's something different about that. And it was just logging it and then kind of organizing it. So no, I would say the answer is no. It did a really great job.
So I was talking this morning with a friend and former student of mine named Joe Amditas, who's at the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State, where I am a fellow. And he is doing really great work explaining to small news outlets in New Jersey how they can use AI and helping them and building stuff on top of it. And in fact, it'd be great to have Joe on the show. We should do that.
Yeah,
he's really practical and in it. Yeah. But just to your point, he this morning said he was just talking about how he uses it. And one use he has things record meetings for him. He uses AI in that way, and it does the summary and all that stuff. And we all have friends now who are doing that. Once a year, you have to do this horrible thing where you have to do your self-assessment for your annual review. You don't have to do that now, Jason, because you are the boss. But in those companies,
I'd probably get some benefit out of it, to be honest, if I did do that.
Jason,
you know,
stop.
No,
don't go down that line.
Okay.
Don't give yourself
All right.
reviews. No,
right.
It's a pain in the ass. But that was what Joe did is, rather than having to sit down and think, what did I do? He just pulls all the stuff together and puts it into an LLM, and it can summarize it for him.
Yeah,
right. It's that kind of stuff that that really is going to be good. And this isn't in the rundown, but in this context, I can't help mentioning it. McKinsey is probably the most hated consultancy firm out there, right? Because I work for companies. When you hire McKinsey, you hire them to give you the excuses to fire people. So everybody knows when they see McKinsey coming, uh-oh. So now there's a story from the Wall Street Journal. AI is coming for consultants inside McKinsey. This is existential. It's schadenfreude, right? It's all of these consultants and all these people, right? Because you got 3 hours at a McKinsey rate. How many thousands of dollars per hour is that?
Oh, yeah.
On a one-to-one level, right? It's unbelievable. And what you really needed was just something to help you organize the thoughts you already had, the tasks you already had, and by making it ask you the questions, by you giving it the answers, you organized your own head.
Yes.
And that's useful. And yeah, I think one of the first categories to go might be this kind of consultancy.
Yeah. I mean, the experience, like I said, just to reiterate, like I wasn't using it as ChatGPT, tell me what I need to do with my business. I had an actual business coach that's being paid, that I'm working with to do that. And we got the action items. This is what you need to do before the next time we meet. And that's what I took into there, still to do the work on my own, but I just need a better way to look at it. I need a better way to analyze my calendar, my schedule, and what happens when these things are removed from my calendar. What am I left with? And how does that tie into my objectives? And that can get really overwhelming for me super quick, though, just the way my brain works. And it was very kind of liberating to a certain degree to be able to say, take that information and just organize it for me so that I can look at it through a different lens. And I walked away with a lot of clarity, which was really nice.
And we're all different. I mean, a lot of people are really good at keeping lists.
Yeah.
You're a good list keeper. I'm terrible at it. Because if it goes on the list, I might as well not do it. Because the list becomes a source of dread, right?
Sure.
But I can see that these are just new tools to help you organize your thinking and organize what you're supposed to do. Because I don't know if you're like me here. There are moments in the last few books where I hit a certain point and it's feeling overwhelming, and thus I do nothing.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I spend the whole day and find out I didn't write a word, I didn't research anything because I didn't know where to start. Mm-hmm. So to have this as a way to just kind of unclog the veins and get going, it's useful. And that's where these things I think are going to be very useful. What blows my mind is that everything you described was still just numeric tokens, right? And it could do all that, and you could have a conversation. You would tell it to remember something and change course and do this and do that, and it would ask you questions. It's just numeric tokens predicted, but the compute is so massive it can do this.
Yes,
It's amazing.
it is.
And you only killed a few forests in the process, but that's okay.
I mean,
that's okay, Jason.
Yeah, that's the other aspect, I suppose. Like, okay, but at what cost? Oh my goodness.
Well, same with our TikTok videos. Same with a podcast, right?
Yeah.
We're
Well, I
using
suppose so.
servers right now, but that's
Totally true. Totally true.
better than the poor horses who have to run around.
Yeah. Right.
So
Well,
before we get into it,
Yeah.
horses. So when I wrote my book about magazines, Harper and Brothers, one of the original publishers, the first powered presses was a horse that walked around and around and around all day in the basement of Harper and Brothers in New York City.
What a horrible
There
life.
came a point where they retired the horse, they lifted it out of the basement and put it, and took it to the country to Father Harper's farm. And the horse was observed. They let it out during the day, and the horse found a tree, and all day it would walk around the tree. And when a whistle blew, it would walk back to the barn for lunch, just like it used to.
Wow. That makes
Creatures
me
of
sad.
habit. I know.
Makes me sad. It's conditioned to just accept the fact that its purpose in life is to walk around a tree forever.
Imagine if we had a horse-powered internet and horse-powered AI.
Oh my goodness, I feel so
it's better
bad
than
for the
that.
horses.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there is no good ending, I think, in all of this.
Sorry
Even
about
if
that.
it's not horses wandering around a tree, it's still something else that's not good. Oh boy. Well, let's talk about AI then.
Yeah.
Let's talk about all the cool things that AI does.
And this is going to be really cool.
Yeah, no, this is really interesting. I saw this and it didn't take me very long because it's very tangible kind of examples of the cool factor of DeepMind's Genie 3 world model. And there are videos. I can show something here in a little bit. But basically, what is Genie 3? Obviously, it's a sequel to Genie 2 that came before it. But what it is it allows users to create real-time interactive virtual worlds. Yes, using prompts, using an image. It creates world models and maintains visual consistency throughout them. And I think with the Model 2 of Genie, that consistency had a memory of, I think, something like 10 seconds or whatever. It was really short. And here, my understanding is that it's minutes long, perhaps 3-4 minutes of memory. So when you're using this and it's creating a scene, it can remember where things were and where things are, and there's persistence and just consistency throughout the entire experience. You can add new elements with a simple, kind of word command, enter that in, pop, it suddenly appears into the scene. And everything's just kind of generated
And the quality
dynamically in real time.
The quality is amazing. The comparison video of Genie 2 and Genie 3, it's impressive what a step up it is. On top, and the memory is the really impressive part.
Yeah, let's
to have
see
a persistent environment.
Yeah, so it's very much like a first person sort of perspective, right? And of course the comparison here, I think that the easy thing to jump to with this is, this is going to be great for video games. It does look a lot like a video game, like a constantly generating, real time randomized but organized kind of video game that just creates for you in real time. But I think there's also, a lot of talk about like what this can actually lead to beyond just that. Could it be used for mechanical, like real life mechanicals and robotics? Could it be used for synthetic data, which is a topic that I know at some point we want to get someone on the show to talk deeply about synthetic data and the kind of implications of that on future models and everything. I would love to have a conversation around that. But this could be, creating a world model that can be the generator for that synthetic data, that's a real wide open possibility as well.
Yeah, I think I wish I were a gamer. I'm not, but this
Yeah.
is really impressive in how you could create your own game environment,
Mm-hmm.
and I can imagine the creativity that comes with that is awesome. But the other topic I come back to on the show a lot is inspired by Jensen Huang is the question of digital twins, and as he talks about them, Jensen Huang, the head of NVIDIA, that the way they're training cars, not Tesla, but places like Google's cars, to work well is that they have to throw in front of it circumstances that you don't have on video.
Mm-hmm.
So they're using things like this to create that circumstance. Here comes the baby stroller, and testing it and training it on that.
What do you do now?
Right. But what made me curious about this then is how reliable is the reality here?
Right.
Right. So it showed a minute ago. It looked like it's near DeepMind's headquarters in London. I know where it is. So right next to there is a canal, and along in this canal comes a not a speedboat, but what do you call it?
Well, first a man in a chicken suit.
Right, which is there. So a skidoo
a
goes
jet
through.
ski,
Now
yeah.
the water goes up onto the bricks, but the bricks don't appear to stay wet.
Yeah, right.
Right? As far as I can tell, at least. So, what is the reliability of using this to train something to deal with the real world? And this is what we talked with Jan LeCunn about. And if you haven't watched that episode, friends, I recommend you do so because he's fascinating. The next paradigm, the next challenge that he talks about is the connection to reality, is to teach these models reality. So imagine when you have a model that really understands the physics of life, and then you can use this kind of creation, and it's not only beautiful and persistent, but it's reliable in its connection to reality. That's when it gets to be pretty amazing. Now Jason's showing the video of Genie 2 versus Genie 3, and just right there in the quality, in how the light plays, in what the character does, and how the movements are. It's just better all around.
And what this shows is just the rapid rate of development of this stuff too, right? Like when I see this side by side, I am reminded of, I don't know how many years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when kind of the earlier examples of image generation were happening, and they were like, a stamp-sized, low res. You kind of have to squint to see what it was creating, but you could see, oh, I can see something. Wow, it's going to be neat when this gets so good that it's big and high definition and everything. And we're far beyond that as far as images are concerned. Now we're talking real-time video generation.
Yeah.
Like this is happening in real time. You move your cursor to turn around to the side. If it hadn't looked over there before, what it creates is all done like at the spur of the moment, and it persists at that point, and it's all done kind of in real time while you're walking through it, based on kind of these examples that they're showing. I mean, mind you, I haven't used it, so I don't know what kind of latency there is or anything. But I think what you say about world model, that is one of the questions that I had is, okay, when we're talking about world models, is it world models based on the world that we live in and the physics of the world that we're surrounded by and everything? Or is world model really meant to be, and I think the answer is both, but really meant to be the world as defined by what we've told it the world is, and how do we create world models that completely accurately represent the world we live in, so that the real practical uses of this technology for things like real world robotics and mechanicals and accessibility and all these things that I'm sure could be heavily impacted by this stuff, can actually be done in a sense of reality that relates to our lives and not just on a screen, with some fantastical imagery.
I think we're going to see it first, obviously, with entertainment, with gaming, with movies in
sure.
Hollywood. Disney did some work where they used a fake version of Dwayne Johnson, so he didn't have to show up on the set as much. And that is upsetting some people. And there was a story of an Indian movie where they changed the ending, which pissed people off. We talked about advertising on the show. We've talked about games today.
The big Vogue story that's been happening right now. Vogue had their first
with a made-up model, the first made-up model on an ad. And that's all fun, and that's all going to be instructive. But I think you're right, Jason. I think where we're headed is when this is reliable enough for real world, then very practical applications come.
Yeah.
Right, training first responders and soldiers, things like that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, this is, man, it just looks so great. I think the resolution on this is 720p, 24 frames per second. You know, this video caught my eye just because the person who's controlling this view, if you're watching the video version, he's walking down this like canal area, he or she is, and you know it's kind of muddy, it's kind of puddly, ends up going all the way down to look at their feet, and sure enough you see the feet being generated in real time, walking as if it is you walking. And when I saw this video,
you see the shadow of the person.
Yeah,
and you see the splash in the water.
It feels very, very much like a real representation of someone walking, you know, and wearing POV camera of some sort. Like it looks really, really real. And what this reminded me of is, or made me think of, is kind of the accessibility perspective here. What if, you know, someone has lived their life unable to walk, and they're able to experience what that actually feels like, not in like a fake sort of like cartoony generated sort of way, but something that is as dynamic as kind of living in life and deciding I'm going to go over there now and see what happens. You know, there's an unexpected quality, but yet it can potentially put them into what it feels like to walk around as if they could, you know, and I think that's empowering. That's really cool.
Back in the early days of webcams, I remember there was a fair amount of people who were going places that people who were homebound couldn't go for them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right.
And then were being directed by the homebound person. Oh, turn left there. Do this now. And it was a wonderful generosity of technology that can make it possible.
Yeah, no kidding. I remember hearing about that. Super cool. So yeah, that's
fun.
It is Genie 3, very cool research and project. I don't know if this is the sort of thing that you and I get access to at some point. I mean, yeah, I didn't really look into like what is the availability or the accessibility for anyone to play around with this. I'm not entirely sure, but nonetheless, very cool. Very cool example of what these systems can do. Open source AI, or openish as we often call it on this show. But we got a few stories that tie into this, and I love some of the other kind of supporting stories that you put in here, because the one that I started with was, of course, if you were following AI news this week, you know that OpenAI getting in the game with its open models, which they announced, GPT-OSS 120B, so 120 billion parameter version that's meant for data centers, for high-end machines. And then you've got GPT-OSS 20B, which is a smaller 20 billion parameter version for desktops and laptops. And these are LLMs that anyone can download, can customize. You can run them locally. It's got an Apache 2.0 license, so it's flexible for personal and commercial projects. And ultimately, it's just a big shift away from OpenAI's proprietary model strategy that they've been using, and shifting closer to an open weight system, using chain of thought reasoning here, similar in many ways to O1, which was released last fall. You don't get multimodality with these models, but you know, you can do a lot of the things that you'll want to do, and it's all kind of done locally in an open manner, which allows you to really get in there if you know what you're doing. I do not know what I'm doing with something like this, but get in there and really play around with the weights and make it your own, I suppose. Kind of a big shift.
Yeah, we've talked the last few weeks about Meta and Llama and Zuckerberg saying that he's been hinting at pulling back a bit from open. And that's been concerning because Llama is such an important model. I was just talking to a colleague at Stony Brook, and he's built a local LLM in the library there, and I asked him what model. Llama. Llama is has enabled a tremendous amount of innovation. So the fact that we have to worry about whether it's going to go behind walls is concerning. However, our friend Jan LeCunn, second plug for watching our interview with him, ended up in a conversation on Facebook with Andrew Ng, two real pioneers of AI. And Andrew was talking about, he said there's now a path for China to surpass the US in AI. And in great measure, he's talking about being open. And also because they're restricted on receiving NVIDIA chips, they're making their own. So Jan came in and said that, as he pointed out in his Senate testimony, the speed of scientific and technological progress is correlated with the speed at which scientific and technical information circulates. AI has made astonishing progress in the last 15 years because research was openly published and code was open source. That's a pretty loud endorsement of staying open. That has changed at Google, Anthropic, and the misnamed Dig, OpenAI, as they clammed up. Progress has slowed down. China has embraced an open model and boasted the speed of progress. So I think it's a really important conversation and a really important finger on the pulse of the leaders of AI. And there's a huge fight going on about this within these companies. And the more we can press for openness, the better. And I think there's an argument to be made. I punish myself watching Morning Joe.
Yes, you do.
I do. And this morning they had on co-founder of Axios, Jim Vandehei. And as I said this morning, he's specializing in having really stupid takes about AI. He has moral panic takes and stuff. And his take today was that, AI owes us because they're taking up the internet, and the internet is our conversation, so they really should owe us. And if we listen to the AI guys, they're going to be so powerful, we're going to lose our jobs. We should go to a guaranteed annual income, and they should pay for it. Boom. Where the hell did all that go? So I think he's full FOS. However, within that, there is a little kernel of interest, is that you could argue that AI couldn't exist, generative AI could not exist without all of our stuff. And there is a mutual societal obligation. And I think that there's some obligation to give back to the society that you learned from. And so openness, I think, is really critical. But if it all closes up, there are other movements. And so in Switzerland, there is a movement for a language model built for the public good. ETH Zurich and EPFL are releasing a large language model developed on public infrastructure that's trained on the Alps supercomputer in the Swiss National Supercomputing Center. And it's they say it marks a milestone in open source AI and multilingual excellence. So there's going to be pushes by these kinds of public interest groups to at least, they're not going to be able to duplicate everything that OpenAI does, but they're going to come as close as they damn well can. And there's going to be a lot of organizations that will come together. So I don't think that closing up is going to be a good strategy either for China or for these kinds of public-private cooperations. So we need openness in AI.
Well, and I wonder, because you kind of briefly alluded to this, but I wonder how, I'm super fascinated about how Jan LeCunn inside of Meta is so completely committed to the open source ethos and nature of all of this. And yet on the, he works underneath Mark Zuckerberg, who seemingly has been pretty committed to open-ish source models up until very recently, when he's basically started, announcing publicly his commitment to scale back on open source frontier model development and to kind of close things down. I wonder how that kind of push-pull happens inside of Meta.
It would be amazing to look at that Slack or whatever they use.
Yeah.
My sense is, Jan LeCunn is a chief scientist at FAIR at Meta. He wouldn't be out saying this stuff if he weren't confident that in public that there is going to be support for this. So my guess is some work is going to be, when they think they're getting close to super intelligence, they're going to try to close that down. But as we've discussed a million times in the show, nobody is far ahead of anybody else. And the fact that OpenAI is now coming out, and notice the dig that Jan made against OpenAI, and is finally doing something that's open, then the pressure on all of these companies to be open, to stay in the conversation, to be used by companies and by individuals is going to be critical. So I think that's going to be a pressure for openness that I hope is going to stay there.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. Well, open-ish models, good. I'll be curious to see, kind of what what people do with the OpenAI open source models? Like, does that end up getting integrated into Perplexity? I'm sure, because Perplexity likes to take a little bit of everything and sprinkle it throughout their service. So, be curious to see what happens there. And I love that you brought the Swiss story to my attention. I was not aware of that. I think that's really necessary as well. Like you said, multilingual covering up to more than 1,000 languages. I thought
How they're
that was,
doing that, I don't know.
I
but,
don't know. How do you
Hey, it's Switzerland.
how do you do that well?
Right.
Like 1,000 languages. Like, sure, I'm sure you could train an LLM on 1,000 languages, but how do you know that you're covering them well enough with the training? I don't know.
But this is going to be, very importantly, it is going to be open source, and the weights will be publicly available, and the training
Yeah.
data will be transparent and reproducible. So it's supporting, this is their language, supporting adoption across science, government, education, and private sector. So it's a great pressure on the private companies. And as I'm doing my research for I've talked about looking at vacuum tubes and amplifiers and the early days of radio, and how corporate. And I'm a capitalist. I want things to make money. I want them to be supported. But how quickly the corporations took over these things and closed off opportunities. So the openness of the internet and the openness of AI and technology in general is a critical way, I think, to make up for a century of mass media owned by corporations.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are going to take a quick break. Before we do, I want to throw out a quick thank you to our patrons, patreon.com/AI Inside Show. And we got a patron of the week, BTJ.
Thank you, BTJ,
for your support. You're a relatively recent patron of the show, so we appreciate having you on board. Patreon.com/AI Inside Show. If you want to support us, you can, and we appreciate when you do. We're going to take a quick break, come back, talk a little bit about the Perplexity Cloudflare kerfuffle. That's hard to say 3 times fast. We're going to talk about that in a second. All right. So Cloudflare says Perplexity is sidestepping website directives. So we're talking things like robots.txt, firewall rules that are in place on certain sites to block AI crawling. And Cloudflare is saying, they've conducted some tests to determine on their end anyways that Perplexity is doing things that Cloudflare says they shouldn't be doing in order to in order to pull in information from websites who have explicitly said, hey, we don't want AI bots to crawl our site. So Cloudflare says it created, just a little insight into the process here, unique web domains that they say had not been indexed by search engines, so they weren't, publicly accessible out on the searchable web, let's say. They had robots.txt files in place, which is a pretty standard way to say, hey, don't scrape me, bro. And then once they asked, that is Cloudflare asked Perplexity for information on those specific sites, Perplexity then spit back some detailed information from those sites. So Cloudflare says, hey, see, we put all these roadblocks in place and Perplexity still gave us information from it. Cloudflare says that Perplexity, when faced with those roadblocks, so Perplexity tries to go there, they're faced with the roadblock, they can't quite get the information the way they would normally. Cloudflare says Perplexity changed its user agent on its bot to appear as a Chrome browser, so that it looked like not an AI bot, in other words. And Perplexity also rotated their IP addresses in the process as well. So Cloudflare says this happened across, I think they said tens of thousands of domains that they had tested. And as a result, Cloudflare has delisted the Perplexity bot in response to this. So that's kind of what Cloudflare says here. Perplexity is basically saying this is all the result of a partnership with a third-party service called BrowserBase, which Perplexity says they rely on that for very specific, specialized tasks, not for lots and lots of queries. Although if Cloudflare did this and tested it on many thousands of domains and still encountered it time and time again. I don't know how true that is, that it's only on very specific selected things if it's, came up time and time again. But Perplexity basically saying this is all misunderstanding. This is just how the web works. A lot of people defending Perplexity in that regard as well.
So I'm just going to browser base. I have things to say. I'm going to be contrarian.
Yeah.
So browser base is interesting. And just on the side, it's a headless browser. So it's a virtual browser. You can go in and it acts as its own browser from. And I'm on a Chromebook, so I'm using a different browser, which is an interesting model. My contrarian arguments here. Number one, who died and made Cloudflare cop of the internet? Right? They just came along and said, well, we think this is wrong. And on behalf of the whole internet, on behalf of all these other sites, we're going to block things from doing things. And that bothers me. That's a misuse, to my mind, of Cloudflare's power. Now, some would say the opposite. Some say it's a beneficent and important and good use of Cloudflare's power. But I think it required more discussion. And they just came out with this, announced it, and they're doing it, and they're trying to punish companies. And I'm troubled by that, number one. Number two.
And it also supports a thing that they did, like, what wasn't it just a month ago where they were putting in these kind of gates
Yes.
to kind of go along. I'm trying to remember the exact story. Suddenly my mind is blank, but had to do with paying to get through to specific types of content, right? Like at the
So companies could put up a business model requirement to get in, which means that you have a classed system of the internet then. So that's my second point.
Thank you.
If I could go and read a site and it's open to me, available for free, why shouldn't, and if my company can, why shouldn't a company with AI be able to? Now, and I hear the argument sometimes, well, but it's a machine, it's not a person, but it's scale. Same argument I make about fair use and training, that if OpenAI has one subscription to the New York Times, and that's the machine's subscription, then as far as I'm concerned, it has a right to read that. I said it's 3, I'm going to make it 4. Number 3, Perplexity has no legal obligation to follow the wishes of these sites. They can say, we don't want you in, but it's an open internet. And as long as they're not violating, see the Anthropic case, where they're not sneaking in or acquiring things through theft, air quotes theft, then as far as I'm concerned, they don't need to pay attention to those requirements. Those are requirements that are put on. A lot of us ignore the terms of service of sites because we don't like them. And we say, yes, yes, yes. And so why shouldn't they be able to do the same thing? Point 3. Point 4 is, and I had this conversation with somebody who's very smart in London, and it sounds all the smarter with a good accent,
yes,
about trying to deal with news and AI and so on and so forth. And he said to me that what a ground requirement should be that you identify yourself as human or machine. And that sounds reasonable, but very quickly it becomes unreasonable because the browser is a machine and it's operating under my command to go do something. What's the difference between that and telling Perplexity to go get something as my agent?
Right.
Which is part of Perplexity's argument here. And so it is operating on my behalf.
There you go.
So in that case, I would consider that human just as much as my browser is. So it's not an easy line here. So if a human has a right to read something, should the machine on the human's behalf, whether individually or at scale, be able to read something? Should a company that holds control over the whole internet be able to decide unilaterally how to control all that? And do the companies with content have the right to create a class system where you're allowed to read, but you're not? That's troubling to me too. So in this case, I end up on Team Perplexity. How about you?
Yeah, I think that I do too. I'm a little conflicted on the kind of, the site's choice to put a robots.txt in place, and
as a courtesy, certainly it should be followed.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I can understand a site being like, hey, no, you know what? It's my site. I want to I want to have the ability to say, yes, I approve, no, I don't. And that's the mechanism by which I do that. I've always kind of seen robots.txt as a way of saying that more or less definitively, even if it's not really, like anybody can still see that and still choose to do their thing. And if when faced with that, I can't help but feel a little bit like, well, okay, that's a little slimy. Like they don't want you to do that. Why are you doing that? But I totally agree with everything else that you said here as well. Like if it's an agent that is acting on my behalf, what's the difference between me looking at the site and me saying, you look at this site? I feel like they're pretty much the same thing, barring, like the standard reactions of scale and all that kind of stuff. But it really is, I think one delineation here is the difference between just blindly crawling web content and shoveling it all up indiscriminately versus tasking an AI bot to say, go to this page and tell me what it says, because I'm not going there. I want you to go there for me. And I think they are two different things.
Yeah. And I think the robots.txt, that's not, in a sense, that's an offer from the search engines. They say, if you don't want to be in our search engine, okay, you do this and we will respect that. Mm-hmm. That's a mutual norm that they set on both sides. And
so then search engine good guy, and I think a lot of people would automatically already say AI company bad guy. And if the AI company now also not looking at robots.txt at a time when AI companies are being time and time again charged with just bypassing, any what people would say is any sort of ethic around content and blah, 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 and just going and taking the thing that they rightly deserve. Like I can understand why people might look at that and be like, all right, here's AI being a bad guy again. But at the same time, like we talk about all the time on the show, like it is A, it's very complicated, and B, it is like it's very similar to me understanding content on a page versus it understanding or synthesizing it and bringing it back to me. I don't know. It's very murky.
And I'm trying to think of analogies for my problems with the notion of discriminatory access. Mm-hmm. If a site could do this technically, a site could say, we will not serve to anyone from a .edu. We don't like education. Mm-hmm. We don't like you liberals. You can't even see our site. And if a news site did that, I think there'd be an outcry.
Yeah, I would think so.
Right?
Yeah.
And so what they're basically saying here is, okay, if you're a good browser company, you can see our stuff. But if you're an AI company, you can't. If you're a human, you can see our stuff. But if you're an AI company, you can't. If you're, in essence, Amazon in the last 2 weeks announced that they're cutting off Google crawlers, and Google respects this because they want to have a closed web on pricing. And in the long run, it allows Amazon to have higher prices. Mm-hmm. Because if you can't find out, because Amazon knows that it is the primary product search. And if people go to Google and Amazon's included and you see lower prices elsewhere, then you're going to go there. But if you know that Amazon's not included, well, you're going to go to Amazon and Amazon might gotcha, right? Mm-hmm. That goes back to a world of AOL and closed gardens, closed parking lots that really disturbs me online. And so discriminatory access, I think, is an issue that we should be discussing at that level.
Mm-hmm. But yeah. Interesting. Also want to throw out to Chris, who's watching live. Thank you, Chris. Got a few folks chatting. Also Daniel. Hi, Daniel. But Chris says a big LLM swallowing up content should follow robots.txt. An agentic RAG search on a site being treated as human makes sense.
That's really interesting, Chris, because actually what I usually hear is the opposite. That if you're just using it to train and you're not replicating the content, that's fair use and transformative. Mm-hmm. However, if in a RAG search, you're delivering a quote from the content, the argument generally is that you should have permission and or a license. Mm. It's complicated.
It is. And it probably makes sense looking at it from one angle, and then from another angle, it makes absolutely.
Yeah. So I get what you're saying, Chris, and I can agree with that, but I can also devil's advocate the other way.
Yeah. No, and that's that's so often how I feel about all this stuff. I feel like I can devil's advocate it to death. I want to have a very specific mindset on these things, but I can, maybe I'm just so practiced and in seeing both sides. I don't know in this regard. It's challenging. And then to touch on your point before we move on about Cloudflare's kind of responsibility here. Like when I think of Cloudflare, yes, there's a large aspect of it being kind of like an underlying an underlying element of the greater web. But I mean, isn't Cloudflare's ultimate kind of goal or the reason that people, choose to work with Cloudflare because they're looking to make their sites more secure so to that end, from that perspective, I can, I guess, kind of understand why Cloudflare might decide to do that for their customers. Are you saying that what they do actually impacts a lot more people than just their customers, and that's why they shouldn't do that?
With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah.
Spider-Man, or not Spider-Man, Peter Parker. And so in essence, when Cloudflare says, we will protect you from bad actors, whether it's denial of service or whatever it may be, Cloudflare is the cop in that sense, deciding that who's bad. Well, in essence, they just decided that AI companies are bad.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a problem with that because that cuts off a lot of innovation and a lot of use. So if AI companies, smart people don't use spam sites. So Cloudflare is saying spam is bad and we're going to cut off spam. Smart people don't want Macedonian agents to come in and ruin social media. So Cloudflare says they're bad. Well, what's happened now is that Cloudflare has lumped AI companies in with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if that were the case, then none of us would be using AI because it's bad.
Right.
That's not the case. People are using AI in droves.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's a complicated topic.
It is indeed.
So
I was saying to Jason before we came on that we could do this. We're not going to, but we could do this show every day. The amount of news and the number of issues to talk about, it's just amazing.
Oh man,
Jason just keeled over from exhaustion at the thought.
Well, no. Not that I wouldn't enjoy talking more about this stuff, but it just reminds me, like sometimes I open up the doc and I love what you put at the bottom of our doc, a little behind the scenes, because Jeff, you've been collecting these stories throughout the week and everything. So I sit down to kind of organize the show and put it into the form that it is. And down below the fold is just a massive block of stories, and you've got them all sorted and sequenced and together. These stories over here make sense together, blah blah blah. And I just always so appreciate that, because as dialed into everything that's happening in AI as I try to be, there's just a mountain of information, a mountain of progress happening all at the same time, and I would miss it all because
what it matters for me, the reason I love doing this show is, number one, talking to you, number two, learning, but number three, it forces me to do that research every week.
Yeah, totally.
And find the stuff, and so I stay up on what's happening in AI, and it's really beneficial for me.
It's a great way to make sure that's the primary reason why I really wanted us to do this show. So, as we've talked about many times, let's see here, ElevenLabs. So music generation, and ElevenLabs is a company that has done a lot around audio AI generation, but really kind of related to like transcription and text to voice, that sort of stuff. So having conversations that sound real, that sort of thing. Well, now ElevenLabs has a music generation product that they just announced, I think yesterday. Users can create music that the company claims is completely cleared for commercial use, which is a first among major AI music models. So they're saying that this is all done ethically and with the deals and agreements in place. They've reached agreements with digital music publishing groups like Merlin Network and Cobalt Music Group. Those are the groups behind artists like Nirvana, Adele, Beck, Bon Iver, Childish Gambino, and a bunch of other artists. And so the idea here, according to ElevenLabs, is that those artists would be allowed to be involved in the training or be able to have their music involved in the training if they choose, if they opt in. So they have the power, they have the ability to say yes or no. There's a revenue stream there for the artists who wish to get involved with this. The revenue share for the artists, according to Cobalt Representative, one of the labels or publishing groups that's involved, says it's favorable terms comparable to other publishing and recording rights holders. So I'll be curious to see longer term how that perspective is on it. Is it truly favorable? Is it favorable in the age of Spotify where artists make a very, very small amount versus the labels who take most, and the other people behind the business side of it who take most of the money. But I was flipping through some of this stuff and okay. Kind of has that little like washy quality to it that you can hear, which I imagine at some point these AI music generation companies are going to work their way through that and get to another side of it. But good background music. Like when I hear some of this stuff, I'm kind of like, this would work in the background more than maybe
Muzak is out of business.
Yeah.
Though I wonder, actually, in Muzak, you're recognizing familiar songs that you like as you go through the department store or await the dentist.
Different types of music, absolutely.
And so it's not just generic music; it's specific songs. I don't know if that works.
But I mean, in the realm of content creation, like some of the videos that I create, I just have a music bed running underneath because having it silent it lacks a certain energy. And do I need that music to be the star? Do I need it to be way far in front so people really notice it? No, I just kind of want a little bit of an energetic bed underneath to kind of keep things moving. And something like this totally, that isn't going to get triggered by the YouTube algorithm as matching something in the library and I get demonetized or whatever the case may be.
Well, that's interesting whether the copyright trolls will come in and try to claim this fake stuff anyway.
Yes.
And get you demonetized from YouTube.
It does happen.
Yeah, I'm of two minds about it. On the one hand, well, a year and a half ago, I moderated a panel at Bertelsmann's investment group, and the advertisers, I think I've said this in the show before, the advertisers said, we don't want to go anywhere near this stuff for public use because we're afraid we're going to get sued in 5 years. Mm-hmm. And we can't be guaranteed that this is usable outside. We use it inside, but use it outside, we're risky. So it's smart business to come along and say, this is the safe one. And I don't know what the warranty is, but if they're saying that, then we can sue them if artists come after them. So from both sides, they can get it. So they better be right. Mm-hmm. And so the artists get something out of it, but the big artists are getting something out of this. It's almost like New York Times doing a $20 million deal with New York Times, which I decried last week as a money grab. The rich get richer. So in a sense, what this does is it gives money to the big guys who are already fairly successful because they're represented. And the little guys who might be hired to do a little snippet for a podcast ain't getting hired now because you can use this. Mm-hmm. So, I'm of two minds as a result. Maybe it's good for music, but maybe it's bad for the vast store of musicians. What do you think?
I think you're probably right. I mean, I don't know that services like this are necessarily good for the up and coming artists. I mean, I've heard from a lot of consternation from other musicians and content creators online about the fact that, there is undoubtedly AI generated music floating through the Spotify catalogs right now, and playlists that are pushing them, not necessarily from a perspective of, oh, check out this AI generated song, but it's just mixed in with other things and people saying, oh, well, Spotify's creating this so that they don't have to pay out as much and it's easy for them to fill their catalogs with generated music. And I don't know how far that goes down conspiracy theory roads or if that's actually proven or whatever, but I wouldn't be surprised. And it's not good for the individual creator or the individual artist or the individual. Yeah, that's the complicated soup of all of this right now is we don't really know what the impact is, but it probably isn't good for the independent.
If you were to make yourself available to do, intro and outro music for podcasts, what do you do as a musician? Do you go to Fiverr, or where do you go to offer your services?
Oh yeah, you could do that. Absolutely. You could go to Fiverr or Upwork. I imagine. I've never used Upwork before, but
I
yeah.
wonder what's happened to the demand there for that kind of work. I've got to believe it's plummeted.
Oh, I have to imagine that too.
Those
You
who
know.
wanted rights secure music had to do that,
Mm-hmm.
and now they don't.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is still that rights aspect too. That's a really good point. Like you could go to Udio and Suno and generate something,
But
but do you have the right then to just start using it indiscriminately in your content?
what
and
again is
everything?
that's what the ad agencies were saying. If you
Yeah.
use pseudo, and then 100 artists sue pseudo,
Mm-hmm.
the other way they can go is they can sue those who used pseudo
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because you benefited. So that's why they're staying away. It's not right secure.
Yeah. Well, and I know that I've heard from a lot of other content creators who kind of talk about kind of the music production landscape of AI and everything right now, who basically say like, even when you're using these generation services, these AI music generation services, you might be getting what seems like an original song, but there's something in there that is either borrowed or influenced or however you want to put it, but it's close enough to something that is part of Music ID that it ends up getting flagged,
Yeah.
even if it isn't that specific thing.
Yeah.
And you lose any sort of monetization you had around that because it's not yours, you
Yep.
know? And so maybe something coming from 11 Labs and how they're setting this up, they are certainly promising that will not be an issue. I'll be curious to see how that pans out and how their training is able to avoid those things. Or do we just always face that and we have to always go in after the fact and plead our case? It's kind of like the fair use argument. It's like you're not there until suddenly you're there and you have to use it to defend yourself.
Lawrence Lessig, Harvard University, famously said that fair use is the right to hire a lawyer to defend your fair use.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think that's spot on. In the state of Illinois, you can no longer, well, let's just say the state of Illinois has banned for the first time in the US, I guess, banned the use of AI chatbots and automated tools like it for therapist work, essentially. So they've passed a law. It's called the Wellness and Oversight for Psychological Resources Act, and it restricts this type of counseling to only human professionals. So, AI can still be used for certain tasks, of course, scheduling, billing, non-clinical tasks, but you cannot use or I guess market or sell a service that uses AI to actually, conduct a therapy session with a client, or therapists can't use AI for help with their own therapeutic decision making, their own communication even. So there's certain things that they can and can't use it for. $10,000 per offense, and it was passed unanimously. So maybe that's a harbinger of what's to come in other states. But Illinois, first state to do it.
Yeah, I think this is good. And I tend to, even though I'm not a libertarian, and I tend to be cautious about regulation, but I think this is consumer protection at a very crucial level. And it's not just, it's easy to imagine someone coming along saying, I'm going to just use the back end of ChatGPT or whatever, and I'm going to create a business and advertise it as the cheapest therapist out there and put it out there, results be damned. Then no one's responsible for the impact that has on people's lives, the decisions they make. And people are vulnerable when they come to this, point one. Point two, someone I know went to their therapist, and the therapist asked them for permission to have their sessions recorded for use in an LLM. Now, doctors record their notes and get transcribed for physical things, but I found that really troubling. You're there and you're paying a fortune, which, by the way, isn't covered by insurance in most cases, and you're there to get an expert human reaction to your human problems. And it's up to you if you want to go off and ask ChatGPT something. But for the doctor to use that, I think is wrong. So I think Illinois is right in this case.
Yeah. And meanwhile, you got OpenAI, not related to this case, but definitely related in subject matter, announcing new mental health guardrails for ChatGPT. So they're putting these into place inside of ChatGPT so that it no longer offers direct advice on personal issues that have any sort of signal of like mental or emotional distress, that sort of stuff. Which I know I've read a lot of articles of people like using ChatGPT as my my therapist or to help me through this hard time, and I guess that is going to be minimized according to these guardrails anyways. Instead, what they're going to do is they're going to encourage users to reflect for themselves, weigh options, maybe suggest questions for the user to ask of themselves. So not leading them somewhere saying this is what you need to do, but rather asking them questions so they get there themselves. And when I read this, I'm like, well, that like I can totally get behind that. Like outside of all my tech work, I meet with a men's group every week through an organization called the Mankind Project. And largely what that is about is it's not a place where you go to get advice. You go there so that other men can ask you questions so that you get to the answer that gets you to the place. And this kind of reminds me of that. And you get so much more out of an experience like that when it's from that perspective, as opposed to, well, this is what I think you should do. So I support this.
Yeah, but the fact that their guardrails failed mean the guardrails will always fail.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
And
guardrails aren't perfect.
right, and so you cannot anticipate, especially when it comes to again to psychology, the edge cases of people's problems cannot be
That's true.
anticipated fully.
Very blurry lines.
And also, what's considered a problem, look at the DSM, and homosexuality was considered deviance, and now, thank God, it's not. And so that's a changeable target as well. So what triggers it in what way, and how does it recognize that? On the other hand,
great question.
it's interesting in the early days of, not early days, but in Facebook throughout its history, Facebook found that it was better than human monitors at identifying suicide risk in people.
I remember that. Yeah.
And also, and that mattered a lot when it came to veterans. And for God's sakes, if you know anyone who has this, I hope you're not using either social media or ChatGPT for this purpose, and that you're seeking the help that is available. So it is, however, imaginable that people interacting with LLMs are going to be more open than they would otherwise be, and maybe more revealing of this great vulnerability. And there comes another kind of responsibility on these companies to say that if they became better at identifying this because people feel that they're private and anonymous in doing this, what do you do then? What's the responsible thing? What's the moral thing for these companies? And all these companies talk about how they're trying to build alignment and human values and all that. Well, this is pedal to the metal, folks. People may be revealing their greatest vulnerabilities to these machines. What then?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really good question. And that just reminds me of a story we have coming later, which makes more sense to actually just move it up right now because it ties exactly into what you're talking about, which is that OpenAI has removed a feature that they had rolled out that allows users to, I guess, publicize or make public
make public,
share.
Right?
Yeah, essentially share. It's probably less about like make this accessible online, even though by sharing it does open it up to a public share thing. But it might be more like, I have this conversation with ChatGPT and I want to share it with this person. So here's the link so you can get access to it. Well, it turned out that these conversations were accessible once people realized they could go to a very specific place within the Chrome browser to basically take a look at the entire stream of all of these things. And I'm not pulling up the right article. That's all right. But anyways, take my word for it. It's so basically,
He's more reliable than a GPT most times.
yeah, sorry. This is what happens when I try and go out of order in things, is that I end up showing the wrong story. But some people basically had reported that their private chats were being publicly indexed. OpenAI says it was a short-lived experiment. They've now undone it. So they're no longer making those conversations discoverable. What people had realized is if they went into a Google search and they did site:/chatgpt.com/share, they could then browse the public archive of queries and content shared by other users, which they might have wanted to share it with that person or whatever with this link, but not necessarily, a potpourri selection of conversations. There might be names, there might be locations, private details and data in there, and just touching on what you're talking about, like depending on what people are talking about with these things. In some cases, they're talking about incredibly personalized things, especially if they're using it as like a therapeutic type tool of some sort. They're going to share things.
Well,
that
you
they
were
certainly
talking-
don't want people on the open web just browsing through.
You spent 3 hours talking to ChatGPT about your business.
Yeah.
You don't really want everybody to see that.
Yeah, I mean, yes, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's not like there's anything in there that's horribly out of line or anything, but it's details of my business that it's my
Jason,
business.
I was hoping you've talked about it with the ways you're going to become rich. I tell you, rich.
Well, that's for another conversation. Here's the article that I was looking for initially on VentureBeat. So those private conversations not leaking to Google search anymore. Okay, I have vindicated myself and found the right story. Let's talk a little bit before Apple, then we'll take a break and get you out of here with a few quick stories on the other side of that. Apple building its own AI answer engine. So Apple, has had a little bit of a dotted history with AI in the past year, let's say, promising certain features, not delivering, then kind of going back to the drawing board. And Bloomberg's Mark Gurman says that now Apple behind the scenes is working on a team called Answers, Knowledge, and Information with the aim to produce results similar to ChatGPT. So essentially it's Apple saying, we got to get in on creating our own LLM here and not necessarily always rely on the others to do it for us, which, to be honest, I'm really surprised they didn't do this sooner. Like they have the resources to pull this together. Maybe it's the same reason that they didn't have their own search engine. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I think it's possible. That's not what Apple's known what it does well and what it doesn't do well and what it doesn't need to do.
Yeah.
And I think it seems to me they haven't decided yet whether they need this. The rumors were they were going to buy Perplexity. And it's interesting to me that Perplexity positions itself as an answer engine. Mm-hmm. And so something rubbed off in those apparent discussions, I think.
Right. They're saying, well, maybe we should. I mean, relationships with other companies versus owning your own thing. Like when you have full control, there's probably nothing quite like having full control of your destiny versus
the main thing for Apple is if you
others.
are in the Apple ecosystem and you're using your email and your calendar and your storage and all that stuff there, you're probably going to want AI services atop that.
Yeah.
Because you can get it in Google Docs, you can get it elsewhere. And the ones that don't have that connection to you, I mean, the Perplexity browser is trying to enable that because you can connect from it to your Gmail. And as we talked about before, in terms of a privacy structure, Google's in a better position because you've already trusted it. You're trusting Apple with your stuff. So can Apple give you those services or not? And does it have to provide that proprietarily, or is that just a commodity service it offers on top?
Right. Yep. Or integrates into all of their other services. I mean, I'm not surprised at all to see this. I guess now it's just a matter of how quickly can they ramp things up and how far behind are they at a time where all the companies see it as being a truly existential thing to be in the race at the front of the pack along, ahead of everyone else. And can't help but feel like Apple in this regard anyways is pretty far behind, but I certainly don't feel like they're out of the game yet. They've got
Apple.
a lot of resources.
Right.
They're Apple.
A lot of
They
loyalty.
make it work. Just a quick reminder, we do have a YouTube channel. If you're watching the video version, you're already seeing this on our YouTube channel. If you had no idea that we have a video version or a channel, go to YouTube, search for AI Inside Show. You can catch all our episodes in video, or you can continue listening in audio podcast form, as most of you do. So, hey, you know what? You got options. Let's take a quick break. And on the other side of the break, we got just a couple of stories and a little speed round. Then we'll get you out of here. That's coming up in a second. All right, so a couple of Anthropic stories here at the top of the speed round. Anthropic launched an updated version of its top tier model, Opus 4.1, claims better coding, better research, better data analysis, which I have to chuckle a little bit because that just reminds me of like every Pixel phone release. Google always says, it's our best Pixel phone yet. Yeah. It better be. It's the next one. I would hope so. So I love that, the AI companies always do that too, right? Like it's our best model that we've ever released. Well, your last one was a year ago, so I would hope so. But particularly with improvements in advanced reasoning, some are saying that this is actually Anthropic getting ahead of a release of OpenAI's long anticipated ChatGPT 5, which I'm checking my watch still isn't here, even though we keep hearing it's coming any day now. So there you go. Anthropic getting out ahead of the news, I suppose, or at least trying to.
The new Oldsmobile's out. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure, I'm probably going to have some sort of interaction with this inside of Perplexity or with the models that they integrate there. And we'll see if it makes how much of an obvious difference it makes. I'm guessing for my use cases, it probably won't make a huge difference, but I'm curious to see nonetheless. Anthropic has also cut off OpenAI's access to its Claude API. The company discovered that OpenAI was using special developer access, so APIs, behind the scenes and coding tools to aid its development of the still unreleased GPT-5 model. Instead of using the regular chat interface, OpenAI was using those APIs behind the scenes. That allowed them to analyze Claude's capabilities against its own, and particularly in the realm of coding. And this apparently goes against Anthropic's commercial terms of service. You can't use our model to develop your own model, that sort of stuff, which I know OpenAI has for their ChatGPT as well. GPT-5, rumored to be better at coding. OpenAI says that this is all standard industry practice. And in fact, Anthropic, we invite you to do the same with our API. We'll see.
Claude, can you spell irony?
Yeah.
And define it? Right. See our earlier long discussion about copyright and such.
Yeah.
And so, how did Claude get built? By reading other stuff.
Yeah.
And so, OpenAI is doing unto Claude as Claude does to others. It's hard to get. It's hard to say whose team I'd be on here.
I mean, I think it's also an example of Anthropic, getting restless maybe a little bit in the lead up to GPT-5. Because I think if you're any other company in AI, you know that a GPT-5 is going to suck the oxygen out of the air to a certain degree. It is because just purely out of mind share alone, people know OpenAI, people still see OpenAI and ChatGPT as at the top of the heap, whether that's true or not. They've instilled that in people's awareness and understanding of AI over the last 3 years, let's say 2.5 years. And so I think a lot of these companies understand that when that happens, it pulls out some of the oxygen out of the air. And so maybe this is a way to kind of lessen that a little bit. I don't know how business works at these places.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Security researchers have demonstrated how Google's Gemini AI could be tricked into controlling smart home devices, all by using a malicious calendar invite. So this is also, known as a prompt injection attack in security circles. And basically, the instructions for the attack would be placed inside of the calendar events, and this caused Gemini when interacting with these calendar events, I suppose, to do things like turn off lights, open shutters, activate boilers, and then go beyond the smart home to, other places like triggering the sending of spam from an email address or revealing private information from a browser, opening apps, that sort of stuff. Google says that they've introduced new safeguards to spot and protect against these attacks, but it seems like, one of the first times that security researchers have shown how an AI could be hacked and start to kind of integrate into the real world in different ways. So,
and this is the caution of the agentic world, because when you give access to all of your things together, that's a risk we're going to have. And I'm old enough to remember when people thought that no one's ever going to buy anything on the internet because who's going to put their credit card in? We solved these things, but there's going to be vulnerabilities here that are going to trigger panics.
Yep, indeed. And finally, speaking of panics, we've got XAI.
Speaking of bad guys.
Yeah, released Grok's Imagine tool, of course, and its AI image and video generator now has a mode called Spicy. And as you might infer by the name of the mode, it spits
and the
out
place it's coming from.
Yeah, and the place, right, exactly. And the place it's coming from. It spits out sexualized content. Sometimes that includes nudity based on the source image that it was fed. Elon Musk is calling this service the AI Vine. So Vine was a short form video service that I think really kind of introduced the world to short form vertical video on a service, on a platform in the Twitter of old, Twitter days of old.
Yeah.
And so he's calling this AI Vine. The internet got to work immediately, seeing how far that they could push this new feature, as the internet likes to do. And in a number of cases, uncensored, fully nude images of celebrities like Taylor Swift started making their way to the X feed, which more and more calling the company X just makes a lot of sense in an unfortunate sort of way. But
I've resisted, but you have a point, Jason.
Yeah, totally. X's acceptable use policy states users are not allowed to depict, quote, likenesses of persons in a pornographic manner. I don't know how this lines up with that, but there you go. I have to imagine Taylor Swift's kind of arsenal of lawyers and stuff are working on their response to this, and maybe there'll be a lawsuit. I don't know.
Yeah. And this is easy this is an easy guardrail to do, and they're purposely not doing it because it's a scummy company.
Yeah. Kind of icky.
That's why I never ever use Grok, because I
never do either.
I am on Twitter because I want to talk to the people I know there, but I'm not going to use those services. I'm never getting into a self-driving, air quotes, Tesla car. Nuh-uh.
Yeah, I've done the full self-driving and it's weird. It's not.
I was okay in Waymo, but I'm not doing Tesla.
Yeah.
No way.
Well, there you go. Jeff Jarvis, thanks so much for being with me today. JeffJarvis.com today and every single week. I love doing this show with you. Go to JeffJarvis.com and find all of Jeff's wonderful work in the written form, also in the audiobook form, The Web We Weave, Gutenberg Parenthesis, magazine, and working on another book now about the linotype.
The linotype, yep. So, come out in spring of 2026.
Dang. Busy
on the covers
guy.
now.
Oh, excellent. Can't wait to see the covers. I love it when you share the covers. That's so cool. It makes it a little more tangible. It's like, all right, now we know what we're looking for. Speaking of tangible, if you want to find all the information about this show, you can go to aiinside.show. Everything that you need is there. We've got, right at the top, a little brag about Jan LeCunn, but you can find all of our episodes, who we are, reviews, everything you need to know about this show, ways to subscribe, ways to support via our Patreon. That's patreon.com/AI Inside Show. There you can, support us on a deep and direct level, and we really appreciate when you do that. We have some amazing executive producers who support us at the deepest level: Dr. Do, Jeffrey Maricini, Radio Asheville 103.7, Dante St. James, Bono De Rick, Jason Knifer, Jason Brady, Anthony Downs, and Mark Starcher. Y'all are super awesome. Thank you for your continued support.
All.
You're amazing. And I think that's about it. thank you for being with us. We will see you next time on another episode of AI Inside. Have a great week. Bye, you guys.